Welcome inside episode 578 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan on the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains, and we have a very fun interview for you on this Feel Good Friday. It is the only man brave enough, the only man bold enough to give Anton Forsberg a first place vote for this year's Bill Masterton.
And we continue our prospect profile countdown with numbers 22 and 21, a small shifty forward and a power forward on deck.
Let's get into all that and more. This is the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.
Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Senators your first listen on this Friday, June 10th. We are free and available on all platforms, including on YouTube, where the best way you can help the show grow is to like the video by clicking the thumbs up below, subscribing to Locked On Senators channel, and leaving a comment. The comment we want to know today is, what are you expecting from Anton Forsberg next season? We're going to get into his season of this year past later on with Cory Lavalette, a North Carolina sports editor. Pilsy, I was just kind of racking my brain. We know that that Anton Forsberg played in Carolina a little bit, but I wonder, we're going to ask Cory this. Do you think those two games he played against the Hurricanes this year were a big reason why he got the vote for the Masterton from him?
I mean, it definitely made an imprint on Carolina fans' brains, I'm sure, being like, we let this guy go, and he's absolutely dominating us on a rebuilding team.
Twice.
Yeah, those were some of his best performances. And hey, revenge games. We talk about it kind of tongue-in-cheek most of the time, but
love a good revenge game.
It's a legit thing for players, and especially when you just, like, whether if you get traded or your contract just doesn't get renewed or whatever, that's one thing. But just having a team drop you and let you go through waivers, I feel like that adds fuel to the fire, being like, you were willing to get rid of me for nothing, and another team took a chance on me, and this is how it played out. So I'm going to make you pay every single time I come to Carolina.
Pilsy, 2 games against the Hurricanes this year, 2-0 record, 94 shots against in 2 games.
What's his save percentage and goals against? Got to be pretty good. The save percentage has got to be good.
947, is that good? When you allow 5 goals in 2 games, like a 250 goals against, like a 947, because he started, remember, it was the second half of back-to-back. It was right after we did our first postcast against Vancouver. They got pumped at home, 6-2. And then they go down to Carolina on the road with travel. And I believe they scored late in the third, but it was all Anton Forsberg. He had made 47 saves on 49 shots. He was ridiculous that night. And then later on in the year at home, he was just as good. I believe he made 42 saves in that game. And the Sens, I believe, went up 4-0, and they ended up allowing Carolina to crawl back. But we'll get into all that with Cory Lavalette. Not a whole lot of Sens news today, but if you want to hear what Trent Mann had to say, yesterday's episode had some juiciness from there. On Wednesday's episode, we got into the whole Claude Giroux thing. Both of those are teetering on 1,000 on YouTube, so let's get a little push on those to go up. We've got this show 5 days a week through the draft, through free agency. And should we give a little programming note? We should, because we're going to start recording our interviews later on today, and we've got a lot booked for next week. I'm actually going to be off the week before the draft. Terrible timing, but it's going to be an awesome trip for my family. So what we're going to do, it's going to be as though we never left. We got interviews planned with Scott Wheeler, Corey Pronman. Can you help me out here? We've got a few more.
Tony Ferrari, Cam Robinson,
David St. Louis,
yes,
and more.
Yeah, we have a lot of interviews lined up. Let's just say that nicely. Yeah.
So it's all been scheduled from long time ago. We've done the draft profiles with enough time that they're on demand for you as we lead up to the draft. Whenever you start doing a deep dive, they'll be there for you. And then the week before, bang, come in hot with a few interviews. And what we've been doing throughout this draft profile season is whenever there's a huge discrepancy between a ranking on a player, I jot that down so that we ask that specific scout, hey, why did you have Isaac Howard at 10, Scott? Like everyone else has him at 20. If you want to learn more about Isaac Howard, we just covered him on yesterday's show. So that's kind of how this is going to flow here coming up to the draft. We are also still planning. I know we have teased this a little bit more, Pillsy. How fired up are you for this full first round mock draft? This is going to be the length of a feature film.
It actually honestly is. I mean, just if you put two of our podcasts together, it's basically the length of a feature film. And we're planning. Sean. Yeah, our manager is telling us to cut things down, but we can't help it. We just got so much to say and so much to talk about. Even when there's not Sens news, we find ourselves going long here. But the mock draft is going to be awesome. And I think this is something that, even though next year the Sens draft isn't going to be the biggest moment of the year for them, they're going to be contending for playoffs. Let's go. We're still going to do the mock draft going forward because it's just so much fun.
Love it.
It gives the offseason a little extra flair. It gives us something to look forward to. And hey, even like we're interested in the draft from other teams' perspective too. Like we're just hockey fans. So getting into the draft and figuring out who's going to go where and what makes sense, it's a lot of fun. And I think we've got a lot of feedback from people saying they're excited for the mock draft, and they should be.
I mean, it helps that our top 10 mock draft, which is free and available already on demand, has nearly double the amount of views that any other podcast we put out on YouTube has. It's going in on 4,500, nearing 5,000 views. So people love the mock draft. So why not only do a mock draft, but we got special guests left, right, and center coming on with us. So stay tuned for that. Not tomorrow, but next Saturday or 2 Saturdays from now. I'm getting caught in
2 Saturdays for now. Yep, the
perfect.
25th.
Yeah,
I believe it is. Yep.
So wow, it's almost like we planned this out. On that Friday, we're doing prospect profiles number 2 and 1. Ooh. So right after the profiles come out, bang, hit them with the mock draft, and then interview season leading up to July 7th. All right, so that's all to come. Pillsy, speaking of what's coming, let's get to our draft rankings right after you have a word from one of our favorite sponsors.
Yes, it's our trusted online sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. And look, guys, the Stanley Cup Finals, it's almost set. Colorado is waiting to see who they're going to play from New York and Tampa. Tampa took a big lead last night. So make sure you're getting in on the action and getting ready for the Stanley Cup Finals. But hey, it's not just hockey on betonline.net. There's basketball, NBA Finals still going on, baseball, golf, boxing, UFC. They got it all. And it remains the best spot for all your latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land. Where's Bruce Cassidy going? That's the new interesting one. BetOnline.net is the #1 spot for all your sports betting needs. And you can head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and actions. Guys, check it out today. It's BetOnline, where the game starts.
A reminder that you can support Locked On Senators by subscribing on YouTube and wherever you download your podcasts. Spotify, Apple, they've all got the 5-star rating. So if you can go smash that, it will help the boys out as well. We get a lot of people asking on Twitter at Sen Central, how can I help the show grow? Well, that's why I'm leading off every show. And I'm going to have to, maybe find a new way to say it. But it's getting a little flow to it, Pillsy? And then I come at you with the question we ask. All right, we'll keep doing that then, as we do with our countdown as well. And I'm actually really excited about the players that we have on today's list. There's some exciting offensive attributes to both of them, but at the same time, we know the Sens love leaders and winners, and we've got one of those coming up on today's as well. All right, coming in at number 22 on our Locked On Senators draft rankings, we are going to Slovensko, Slovakian Pro League, Filip Mesar, a right-wing, shifty, dynamic forward.
Yeah, for Filip Mesar, definitely shifty is one word you can use for him. And Ross, what I found most about him is this is a guy that excels with the puck on his stick. And we'll get into that later on. Let's get into a general view of Mashar. Like you mentioned, he played in the pro leagues in Slovakia. He's actually played 2 full seasons in the pro league. So that's a big jump on a lot of these other prospects. And there you see, if you're watching on YouTube, the graphic is up. In 37 games, he had 8 goals, 8 assists, good for 16 points. He's 5'10", 174 pounds, a right winger, and the range Ross, finally on these prospects is starting to tighten up. We don't really have any crazy outliers here.
Well, Tony might be a little high on him, but other than that,
Yeah, it's all very like he's going to go somewhere mid to late first round. And then Tony's high on him at 10, and then Craig Button is a little lower on him at 37. So you've got a range of 27, which may sound like a lot, but compared to most of the other guys we've looked at, Ross, like some of them were absolutely insane. So this is a little more consensus of where he's going to go.
he's a 5'10" right shot, right wing, 174 pounds. He did pretty well at the testing as well at the combine. And just to go through the rankings first, Tony Ferrari, as I mentioned, has him at 10, which is, if we're taking off the Olympic scores of 10 and 37, now we've really tightened up here because Craig Button has him at 37. So if we take off those two, then we've got Wheeler at 21, Bob McKenzie at 22, Chris Peters at 22, and Elite Prospects at 27. So you can see it really tightens up. Corey Prodman at 32, so at the tail end of the first round. But this is a guy, to me, a little more boom or bust, where he's either going to establish himself as a contributing middle six winger who can play on the power play, and he actually has a pretty good defensive awareness game as well, really good in transition. So if there's a loose puck in the D zone, not only is he likely to strip that off the player's stick, but he's also more than likely going to be able to fly out of the zone with it and create an offensive zone entry all by himself. And the fact he was doing that in a pro league at the age of 17, I think speaks pretty highly of what he's capable of at the next level. Love these jerseys too, the little goats on it as well, playing for HK Poprad in the Slovak league. So I'm excited to see. It's a little tough again when you're looking at a player who's playing in a league that's not always known as having the best talent. Not that it's awful, but I do think that it is something to be wary of, where it's like, okay, what's he going to do at the next level? Like we always mention Corey Prodman's player comparables that he has. And this one's interesting. I mean, I don't know how many people even remember this name from when he was in Toronto, but Alexander Barabanov has found a home in San Jose. Just like a smaller player who's dynamic, but never really wows you. Like he's dynamic in his own way, but not the way that the casual fan will be jumping out of their seat for. So I'm just curious if the offense is going to translate. And then Pilsy, as you know, I like to say, what's the B game? When the A game, when he's not dancing out of his own zone with the puck, when he's not getting his teammates involved in zone entry situations, where's the B game going to come for Filip Mesar?
Yeah, and that's where it's going to be interesting. And it's interesting that you mentioned him as a winger because in watching Scouching's video on YouTube, go check it out. Will Scouch is great stuff. He mentioned that he mostly played center in Slovakia. Yeah, and it's not like those other leagues where we're looking at SHL first round NHL talent playing 10 minutes a night and on the fourth line, no power play. I looked at his game logs, Ross. He was averaging between 50 and 20 minutes a night. And sure, the Slovakian league definitely down there in the ranks of competition level. But the thing you got to remember is he's playing up against men here. So he's playing up against guys that are bigger, stronger, more experienced, and you know, this is their job. Like this is what they do. It's not just something that they're aspiring to do. These are pro hockey players. So yeah, the competition's down, but the compete level is right up there. And
these guys got to feed their families, Pills.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. I know it sounds funny, but that's where it's at. Like these guys they're hungry. Sure. They're hungry to play.
100%. And well, Scott Wheeler, not to cut you off, but Scott Wheeler mentions that the Kitchener Rangers have his CHL rights.
Yeah.
It would make sense for him to make the move next year, don't you think?
Absolutely. Like, what's the point of playing 3 pro seasons in Slovakia if you're planning on coming and playing pro in North America, right? So I think he would do that. And now he's at an age where it's probably a little more comfortable. And with COVID kind of settling down a little, it's not as intense moving from one continent to another and being away from your family and stuff like that. One thing to note too, Ross, though, which might have skewed his rankings a little, he hasn't played a single game since April 2nd.
Yeah.
That's a long time. And most of these other prospects are either lighting it up in the playoffs, have already finished championship runs, stuff like that.
Almost like the next guy on our list who dominated the under 18s.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So he's kind of been stagnant here, and maybe you're looking at the numbers saying he played in the Slovak league and he only had 8 goals in 37 games, 16 points. That doesn't really pop out to me, but the key thing to look at is he dominated in his own age groups. Like before he went pro, he was putting up big numbers in short seasons, like only like 30 games. And I guess we can review this again when we pull up EP graphic further down the road here. But like I mentioned, let's get into what he does well here. Mashar, he's so good at keeping possession of the puck. He cycles it with his line mates. Like when they have the puck, it's like, okay, now we're on. Like now let's punch into my shift. I'm getting to work. And Will Scouch applauds how he uses his body position and he pivots to protect the puck. Like for a smaller guy, he was able just to, if bigger guys wanted to kind of impose their strength on him, he would just turn his body. So like, okay, now you got to deal with my backside. Try getting around me to try to get that puck. I'm going to pivot quickly so you don't have that good body positioning to just strip it off me or out muscle me. But where I kind of found he got into some trouble is for a smaller guy, he doesn't have a lot of top speed. So he's not just going to blow by big defenders on the wing just at a pace of saying, I'm faster than you, try to catch me. He's not able to do that. He is a good skater in four-way mobility, so he's going to be a little shifty getting around guys, but the top speed, you would like to be a little bit more for a smaller guy. And then one thing is, once he's amazing at transition game and moving the puck up ice. But then when he's in the O zone, this is where you talk about his B game, Ross. His A game is getting the puck into the O zone. A B game, what are you going to do when you're there? It's like a dog chasing cars, right? Or Joker with the Batman. Like once Joker catches the Batman, he's like, well, what do I do now? Like that's all I know.
My dog chasing squirrels. Like, what are you going to do, buddy?
Yeah. What are you going to do with that squirrel? What do you got planned? And I find with Mashar, that's part of the problem here is he gets into the O zone so often, and then he's just like, well, I'll just keep cycling the puck here. I'll just keep moving it. And then when my shift's getting close to an end, I'll just fire a low percentage shot on net and go off for a change. And that's fine because you're moving the needle. Your team's possessing the puck. You know, it's the old saying, sometimes offense is the best defense. But when you can't finish those plays, it becomes frustrating for coaches, and you're not going to get those high leverage, high importance situations if you can't finish your plays.
I'll spin zone this, though. How about the fact that he's playing on the Olympic-size ice in Slovakia? Maybe that if he does come over to Kitchener, playing in the old auditorium up there in Kitchener,
it's a good rink.
You're not able to hide. There's nowhere to hide. Yeah. So that might be the make or break. And I mean, he's not going to play there before an NHL team has to use a first-round pick on him because in all likelihood, as you saw from everyone's rankings, he will be a first-round pick. But hopefully good coaching over there will teach him. And again, this is if he goes. We're not confirming or anything that he will make the jump to the OHL. But I think that would be a fantastic way to teach him, hey, you got to take the middle lanes. You have to be a little less of a perimeter player once you get to the offensive zone. We know you're good on the cycle, so just use it. Like I think that'll be a huge help for him in his development.
Teaching him. Bob McKenzie's son. I'm pretty sure he's still head coach of the Kitchener Rangers. So
I think so too. And I mean, they've always run a great program. Like I'd show him some power forwards in the NHL. Even his old buddy. There's a super cool photo I'll pull up from Mashar's Instagram where it's him, Simon Nemec, and Yuri Slavkovsky, all when they are, I don't know, 10 years old at best. So that's super cool. And here, I'll pull this up right now, actually, because they then showed them all at the World Juniors this year. Unfortunately, it got canceled pretty quickly, but they've been playing together since they were like 10 years old. Isn't awesome. That super cool? Mashar is, as you can imagine with his size now, he is the one on the right.
Yes, that's what I figured.
Yeah, and no surprise, that's Yuri Slavkovsky in the middle, now standing 6'4". So, I mean, the old days are gone. Now it's reality. I have a feeling that is auto-translated. That to say, though, I've always got a soft spot for the Slovaks. My best buddy, Slovak. So I'm going to probably pump his stars up a little bit. But before we do that, Pilsy, are you confident that he's going to be an NHL regular, or is he a quadruple A player, as we use the baseball reference, where you're too good for the AHL, you're an all-star there, but the skills don't translate exactly to the NHL level?
I think it's going to be very important for him to come over and start playing North American style hockey on the smaller rinks. So moving to Kitchener would make a lot of sense, that's for sure. And like we already mentioned, great program there. And I think he has the skills to at least have a base to work in the pro league, because carrying the puck up the ice, especially if he's going to stay as a centerman, is a massive skill. But can he improve on that? Can he get that top speed? Can he get a better shot, or at least get himself in better position to take better shots? That's where I'm not quite sure. And Ross, the one thing I thought was kind of interesting about Mashar here is, and maybe you can help me out here, I didn't see any reports or talks about how he plays defensively. Did you?
Just that he uses his speed well, and he's able to
Okay.
pinch off. That he's able to pinch off attackers at the wall, and more so, his defense is all in transition.
Yeah.
When there's a loose puck available, he's on it, and he can play D well. He's not a guy who's going to be overly physical and stop the cycle down low or anything like that. He's just your winger that'll probably stay high, try to cover the point, and then hope for a loose puck that he can pounce on. Like, everything in his game is built around his speed and his pace, and I think that those are two very high qualities to have in a offensive minded winger, a guy who can break the puck out quick and turn defense into offense on a dime. So I think that you mentioned the best defense is a good offense sometimes. So I think that that's probably what I'd say to that.
Yeah,
but
fair.
he to me is like, he's B plus at a lot of things. So I think that it's going to translate. So I will be a little higher. He's January 3rd birthday, 2004. You mentioned small, and they do have him as a center listed, winger / center here on Elite Prospects, but NHL Central Scouting, Scott Wheeler, Corey Pronman, Elite Prospects, and the NHL Scouting Combine, which I believe would be Central Scouting as well, all have him listed as a right winger. I think that's where we ultimately see him play at the next level. And as you can see, like, growing up, he was able to produce. He even had a couple goals, a couple assists in 15 playoff games as a 16-year-old in the pro league in Slovakia.
Impressive.
So it's super impressive. And that shows me that the lack of size won't be an issue, because he's able to battle through even at that young of an age.
And then look at the numbers up against his own peer group, right? Like, that's what I was referencing.
Huge. 49 points in 41 games, 47 in 47, 41 in 33, and then he made the jump. Even like internationally, even as recent as this year in U18 events, 12 points in 7 games. It's unfortunate that the World Juniors were cut short, because that Slovak team, super, super fun. We are entering the golden age here, and we had a golden age of Slovak hockey. Your Gabricks, your Hoses, your Zedniks, your Palfis, your Charas, your Mazaroses, to get a little Sens content in there. But to say that the next wave is here would be an understatement. With Nemec, with Mashar, with Slavkovsky, you've got Adam Sikora's kind of a diamond in the rough type guy in this draft as well. And of course, Simon Nemec, the defenseman, as well. And then next year, there's top 10 pick coming as well, Dalibor Dvorsky. So keep your ear out for that. How many stars do you have today for Mashar?
So I appreciate his skill in transition, but like I said, I just don't know if he's going to find a way to finish the job once he gets into the zone. I feel like for him to be successful, he's going to have to play with 2 good shooters on his line. Like, he's going to need multiple options to get the puck to someone who can finish the play. And I just feel like we talked about with the rankings, I feel like he's going to go somewhere between 10 and 20. I don't see a scenario where the Sens are going to have a chance for him, and he's not a guy I would trade up or down for. For me, it's not a fit with the Sens, and that's what I use for these stars. So I'm going 2.5 stars for Filip Mesar. If they're gonna find someone in that range to trade up or trade down for, there's other guys I'd be banging on the table for other than him.
Yeah, that's fair. I've got him at 3.5 stars. I just think that if he can come here and light up the comparison that I'm going to make, and maybe a little less dynamic, but Fabian Lysell from last year, I think that you saw him play at an SHL level, wasn't really producing. Then he came over here and just wowed once he got to Vancouver and playing in the WHL. So I've got 3.5 stars for Filip Mesar. All right, Pillsy, back to the countdown we go. This is going to be a fun one. Coming in at number 21, it's the captain of the United States National Team Development Program, Rutger McGroarty, and another elite name in the draft.
Yeah, Rutger McGroarty is definitely a great name. And this is a kid, Ross, who was...
Cornhusker.
Yeah, Cornhusker, yeah, from Nebraska. He really seems like the kind of guy that eats, sleeps, and breathes hockey. Like, if you haven't had a chance, go to The Athletic, read Scott Wheeler's article on him growing up. His dad played in the ECHL for quite a while, and then his dad had a great, and I think he's still coaching actually with the Muskegon Lumberjacks. I think is that their name, the Lumberjacks?
Yeah, I believe so. And his dad's Canadian, right?
Yeah, his dad's Canadian, so big hockey guy, and his
Good
dad,
Ontario boy, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. He is from Ontario, and his dad was a coach for the USHL team in Lincoln. So Rutger had access to the rink at all times.
Awesome.
His dad quite literally had a key to the rink,
Yeah.
not figuratively, like had the key to go whenever they wanted. And from Wheeler's article, it said that's all Rutger did as a kid. All his buddies, they all just met at I think the rink's called the Ice Box, which
Hell yeah.
that is hilarious. What a name for a rink in Nebraska. But let's get to where Rutger's at these days. He's a centerman playing at 6'1", 204 pounds. With the U.S. program, the U18 division, he had 54 games played, 35 goals, 34 assists, a dual shoot pass threat option, and 65 PIMs. And wouldn't you know it, Ross, he's committed to the University of Michigan.
They don't rebuild, they reload at Michigan as well. And Rutger McGroarty is a power forward, but he plays with so much skill. And that skill impressed Chris Peters to the extent that he's 13th on his list. Now, Tony Ferrari doesn't even have him in his top 32. So we're back at the big ranges, Pilsy. Who else we got here up a little higher? Scott Wheeler at 15. Corey Pronman at 21, Craig Button at 25, Bob McKenzie at 26, and elite prospects down at 40 on their list, and we can already know why that is. The average rank is 23.33, and I'm going to start with elite prospects, and we'll kind of build for Rutger McGroarty. This guy, by the way, go look at his highlight reel. Not only does he not only does he shoot like an elite shot in that one-timer position, he's great in front of the net. He blows guys up. There was a clip that Derek Lee showed on the Future Watch podcast where it was a red versus blue game or white versus blue game for the U.S. So he's going up against his teammates, and he unloaded on Logan Cooley in the middle of the ice. So you don't often see guys with that killer instinct going up against their own teammates, but that's not McGroarty's game. This guy, he's a menace. He's a leader. He's everything that you'd want in a prospect, except for the skating, which is where I get to elite prospects note on him. I was watching their scouting meetings that you can find on YouTube. He plays as if he's a better skater than he is what they say. Like, he's always trying to dipsy doodle and make dynamic plays, but sometimes his skating just doesn't allow it to happen, Pilsy.
Yeah, and that's fair. Like, that's typically what you see with power forwards, right? Where the power is an advantage, the speed is a disadvantage, and that's going to happen. But where I don't really have red flags popping up here, Ross, is Rutger McGroarty. This is a guy, like I mentioned, he spent a lot of time on the ice as a kid, and I just feel like he's going to figure that out. Like, he's going to work so hard on his skating. He's going to have off-ice training. And his family moved around from, like, he played in Oakland, in Michigan. He played...
Oakland, that caught me too, because that's where Josh Norris played. Oakland is a suburb of Detroit. That got me.
Okay. I thought it was Oakland, California.
I know.
Okay,
I know. That got me in a pickle. The Junior Bears or something there?
Yeah.
Anyways, it's Oakland, Michigan. I got in the same pretzel.
Okay, sorry, my American geography isn't up to snuff, guys. But
Rutger McGroarty couldn't even point to Ottawa on a map, I bet.
That's not good if you don't know the capital nation of your neighboring country. But I bet most Americans don't. That's another thing. 100%. But what I'm trying to get at before geography got in the way here is his family put him in a position to succeed. They were like, we know you love hockey. We know your dad is a hockey mind. He's a great coach. We're going to invest our time and probably a lot of money into getting you into the best programs. We're going to move around all around the country. Whatever we have to do to support you, we will do. And that's why I love these prospects where I bet for not even a single second does Rutger McGroarty have a plan B. this guy's going to be a hockey player through and through. And he's going to figure out that skating. And what that also allows, Ross, is he has great leadership. Like, he was a captain for 3 different teams, a couple of those teams in Michigan that I noticed in his earlier ages. And in Scott Wheeler's article, they mentioned that typically the U.S. team names a captain and then they'll name another captain later. His teammates and coaches all were banging on the table saying, no, for this time, we're keeping it as Rutger McGroarty here. He's such a good leader. He gets the boys fired up. He knows when to pipe in. And that comes from him being in the locker room of USHL teams when he's like 7 or 8 years old. He said he would, as soon as he's done from school, he would just go to the rink and hang out in the locker room of these USHL teams. So he understands the game of hockey on and off the ice.
Off ice, I see a lot of Jake Sanderson in him. This guy just eats, breathes, sleeps hockey. I tweeted this out on April 30th when I started my deep dive into the NHL draft. If you're just listening, this is my tweet at Ross Levitan on Twitter, taking my first real dive into the draft today. And I can already tell you that the Sens are going to select Rutger McGroarty. And now when you hear this from Scott Wheeler, doesn't it make sense? McGroarty, quote, is one of those kids who looks like a pro hockey player. If he walked into an NHL dressing room tomorrow, he would be stronger and broader than most of it. Then you add in the charisma, which made him the natural choice for captaincy at the U.S. program, and the light and energy that oozes out of him. And you have to be careful not to put too much stock into the off-ice pieces of the puzzle that already appear to be figured out.
I feel like the Sens sometimes are a little guilty of that. But like I mentioned in past episode, if that's where they find a lot of strength and that's where they look at guys off ice, because I think sometimes people forget you're not just drafting prospects, you're drafting people. Like, how are these people going to work out in your franchise and help your culture? And Rutger McGroarty is a guy who I think will embody the Sens culture and elevate it.
Well, Wheeler then goes on and says, but I also think he's a darn good hockey player too. So
that's
there you
always
go.
Nice. Yeah, that's
so
always
it's not
a
only
bonus.
it's not only the off ice, and Wheeler even goes on to say he's a better skater than he gets credit for. He's just awkward as heck when he does it. So I think that there is some merit to that. He's got a unbelievable finishing touch around the net. How many of those 35 goals was he just kind of looking like a bit like Brady Tkachuk in front of the net? Like, he's able to make a quick move with good hands in tight. Like, the closer he gets into the net, the better he is. And that's not to take anything away from his long range game, because I saw some Josh Norris shots from the one-timer position as well. Now, some of these scouts think he might translate better as a winger at the NHL level, which I wouldn't be against. But right now, like, if you got that nose for the net as a centerman, like, he'll probably be drafted as a center, and maybe depending on how the first year goes at Michigan, we know that's a deep program, maybe gets shifted over to the wing there.
Yeah, I see him as more of a winger, Ross, just because he has such a good shot. Like, his shot reminds me a lot of Igor Sokolov, a heavy shot, but
heavy.
As Wheeler mentions in his little write-up too, he's really good at beating goalies in those good spots, Ross. Like, as tendies, we know, like the mid blocker, like just in between your blocker and your pads, like that's a great one. And he's able to pick those spots from coming down the wing. I say this a lot. Rutger McGroarty is the type of guy you want to have the puck on their stick on a 2-on-1, because he can score on you with a quick shot, or if you cheat shot, he's going to pass it over to a teammate right on the tape and they're going to tap it in backdoor. So Rutger McGroarty, I see this guy as a Sens type prospect. Like, Trent Mann has him circled and underlined on his scouting list.
But why wouldn't you? He's a March 30th birthday, 2004. He had 7 assists and 11 goals in his last 10 games he played, plus 14 on that. He's already got the pro frame, pro build. He is an absolute menace. He, let's see the stats down here as we go. Like 9 points in 6 games, 8 goals in 6 games at the World Under-18s for Team USA. Like, he just produces. That's what he does. Plus 54 at the program in 54 games this year, Pilsy. Like, he's a goal scorer. Look at this. His last year with the Oakland Grizzlies, 82 goals in 63 games. Just absolutely comical performance there. But I'm excited to see him at Michigan. I really think that's a good spot for him. I don't love Corey Pronman's player comparable for him. He says Tyler Toffoli. I think that there's a little more power to McGroarty's game. and maybe a little less finesse that we've seen out at Toffoli over the years. But I think the production could be similar.
Yep, definitely. It's a dangerous game comparing players based on their production rather than playing style. Let me tell you that.
It certainly is. How many stars do you have for Rutger McGroarty?
I got Rutger McGroarty at 4 stars, Ross, because it's going to be very interesting to see where he ends up in this draft. I wouldn't be. It's maybe a little bit of a stretch, but I would not be surprised if the Sens have this guy highlighted at 7th overall.
Me neither. I wouldn't be surprised at all. But Pilsy, I'm going for it. 5 stars.
Woo!
I'm going for it. I think this is my 3rd 5-star guy, if not 4th.
Yep.
I'd have to go back into the books and figure it out. But 5 stars for Rutger McGroarty. I think he just brings such a unique package that not a lot of guys have, where it's the size, speed, skill, physicality right now. Yeah, the skating needs a little bit of work, but I don't think it's such a detriment that he's going to falter at the next level because he can't keep up. He, like Brady Tkachuk, was looking like Bambi the first year in the NHL. I see a lot of similarities between these two guys, Bills. Yeah, I really do. Maybe not to the same level. Obviously, Brady was a top 5 pick. I mean, we're talking about maybe McGroarty getting scooped up at 7 is a bit of a reach, but I think that he is going to be a perfect prospect to add to a group that's already pretty deep. Like, imagine him on a line with Ridley Gregg, just meshing around, maybe even Tyler Boucher. That's your 3rd line down the road.
Boy.
There's a lot of physical attributes that we know the Senators love, but don't let that distract you from the fact that Rutger McGroarty is just as skilled as he is tough. All right, Pilsy, let's throw it over to Cory Lavalette, who's going to explain his reasoning for having Anton Forsberg as number 1 on his Bill Masterton ballot. All right, we now welcome on a very special guest. We're going down to Raleigh, North Carolina. It's the sports editor for the North State Journal. Cory Lavalette joins us. Cory, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, guys. Thanks for having me.
Oh, we really appreciate it. We were scrolling through the almost 200 voters for the Bill Masterton. We had to find out who had Anton Forsberg number 1. Pilsy and I, we're a goalie-friendly show. Yep. We absolutely love what Anton Forsberg has become, and it's a great story. Was that a part of the reason why you chose him as your number 1 in your ballot?
Yeah, I mean, here's a guy that could have easily gone back to Sweden. I mean, the way he bounced around, especially last year, the Hurricanes even claimed him at one point as protection for Alex Nedeljkovic because they had to put Nedeljkovic on waivers at the beginning of the year, and they wanted to make sure they'd have a number 3 guy. And he bounced to 4 teams in just a couple months. And that's a tough gig. You look at the guys who make careers out of being backups, and those are really, really tough jobs. Like you see, I saw Brian Elliott in a baseball hat last night.
Yeah.
And you think about those guys. Yeah, you think about those guys and how they have to go everywhere to whether it's at the end of their career or sometimes their whole career. Alex Lyon is with the Hurricanes affiliate in Chicago right now, and he's been spent bouncing back and forth with the Flyers for years, and now with the Hurricanes and probably somewhere else next year. So I always think those guys are really impressive. Like, especially a guy coming from overseas, it'd be really easy for him to go cash in and play in the SHL or something. And instead he stuck it out, and here we are. He's got a gig, and it's a pretty great story and a good guy. I only knew him for a little bit, and he had the second stint in that we just mentioned in Raleigh, but the first time he had come up and been in the AHL and stuff. So just a good guy. We, of course, questioned him about his chicken thing from a few years ago. I'm sure you're all familiar with that.
No, what's the chicken thing?
There was something, I can't even remember what stop along the way. I guess it would have been with Chicago, where somebody just was talking to him and he said, like, I'm not going to eat chicken that's here. Did you see how big the chickens are? That isn't what chickens look like. It's this amazing thing. You'll have to look it up. It's this amazing, chickens aren't supposed to be this big. Breasts that are this big. They're supposed to be. It's a funny little thing about how he was like, I'm not eating chicken when I'm over here because it's insane.
Well, hey, Sens fans will be happy to hear that, because Craig Anderson back in 2012 sliced his hand open cutting frozen chicken and missed 3 months. So you know what? Stay away from chicken if you're a goalie. It's a scared bird anyways. You don't want that energy inside of you. But hey, how much did the fact that Forsberg was dominant in the 2 games against Carolina, did that influence you at all? Because those were maybe 2 of his better games all year.
Yeah, no. I mean, I would say no. I kind of look at the big picture a little more with an award like that. And well, I guess you look at a big picture for all the awards, but for that, I was just more impressed with the guy's perseverance more than anything. And it's an award that at times gets given to people too much as like a comeback player of the year award. And to me, that's not what Forsberg was. He's a guy trying to establish himself as a legit NHLer, who's been battling for that for, pretty much 10 years and, finally made it. So that's what stood out to me. But yeah, he's got all the talent in the world. He reminds me a little bit of Antti Raanta, who, Raanta had injuries that have slowed him down. And, obviously his season ended again with an injury in that game 7 with New York, but similar guy in that he's got all the talent in the world. And it's just like, if he can find a way to stay healthy, stick somewhere, put it all together, he can be a goalie in this league. And, I think, I don't know if Forsberg's on Antti Ranta's level as far as talent, but he's definitely an NHL goalie. And that's what stood out to me.
And I think a big consideration for Forsberg for the Masterton is, like you mentioned, he'd been bouncing around a lot, but now he's at a point where he's got young kids, he's got a family. So if you're a single guy bouncing around, that's one thing. But when you're trying to create a home for your family, was that a big part too of you realizing, wow, this guy really did not give up and he's providing for his family now?
That's all a part of it. I mean, the work I do, I'm lucky. Well, we could say I'm lucky. I don't know. I don't travel with the team on the road, so I'm not away from my family a lot, which I see as lucky. Like, I don't have to be away all the time. I can watch my kids grow up and be with my wife and all that. That's all rolls into what I was talking about guys bouncing around, because I think that gets overlooked a lot of times. Even these guys that are NHLers that play, we had Derek Stepan here, another Senator. Ian Cole, those guys.
Another Senator for 25 minutes.
Yeah. Brendan Smith, all those guys that are signing 1-year deals and, either picking up and moving their family somewhere else or leaving their family behind and going off to play for 8 months, 9 months, all that stuff is like, I think definitely cool to see those guys, kind of make it and get a little bit of stability in their life.
Yeah, because you mentioned Forsberg being a stopgap in Edmonton, Winnipeg, Carolina twice, as you said. But when he came to Ottawa, it was the same thing. They just couldn't rely on Matt Murray to stay healthy. And then all of a sudden, he's earned himself almost $9 million on his 3-year extension total. So I absolutely love the story. I think that the Antiranta is a pretty good comparable in terms of what they've battled through in their careers. Obviously, one injuries, one bouncing around more. But those guys, I think, were battling for a job as the Hawks goalie together back maybe 4 or 5 years ago. But I love the perseverance. I love that you recognized it as well. I wasn't banging on the table like I was for Craig Anderson a few years ago that he needs to be a finalist, and ultimately Anderson won the award. But I love that he got not only your first place vote, but I believe he had a couple seconds, a few thirds as well. So it's great to see him getting recognized as well. Pillsy, do you have anything else for Cory?
When Forsberg in his second stint got released from Carolina, or things didn't go, how was fan reaction, and what was reaction around the team? Like, was this kind of like oh man, we really thought we had something here for his second time around, or was it more like you say, it was more just a paper transaction just to cover up in case you needed a third goalie?
Right. At that point, he was a known commodity, so they knew him. Yeah. They knew he was capable of the role. And I mean, they had Nedeljkovic, who has obviously moved on, but they had to put Nedeljkovic on waivers at the beginning of the year last year because they had Peter Mrazek, they had James Reimer, and they had to do that. That's why when, everybody acts like the Hurricanes got bamboozled last offseason by trading Nedeljkovic, I'm like, anyone in the league could have had him for nothing at the beginning of last year. And the Hurricanes kind of knew what they had, a guy who was capable of getting hot and whatnot. And so they put him on waivers because they had their 2 guys they thought were the 1 and 2s. And obviously Nedeljkovic ended up pushing his way in a little bit there. But then they knew, like, if he gets claimed or something, we need to have someone else. So it was just, that was a rough one. Cause what was it? It was Edmonton, Winnipeg. These are not easy, easy moves if you have to make. So,
I think a lot of Oilers fans would have preferred Anton Forsberg in goal during this recent playoff run.
Definitely.
So,
yeah.
No doubt. Well, hey, Cory, we appreciate you jumping on for a few minutes. We'd love to have you back maybe before or after the Sens play the Hurricanes next year, and we can chop it up again.
Yeah, I'd love it. That'd be great, guys.
All right, Pillsy. Stick taps to Cory for joining us. Great to get his reasoning for that. You got any notes before we go for the weekend?
Give us some news, Ottawa Senators. Give us a signing, sign someone to the front office, do something for us here, because although we love talking about the draft and we can fill a full episode with just talking about 2 prospects and having an interview, thanks Cory for joining us. I wouldn't mind a juicy bit of Sens news to sink our teeth into here.
Verbal meme, the stick man or the man with the stick poking a rock, do something.
Yeah.
The Sens logo is the do something. However, I did hear from the organization, this is the busiest little stretch here. Pro scouting meetings, amateur scouting meetings. But I'm with you. Let's see something. Enjoy Game 6 on the weekend. Go listen to our friends at Locked On Rangers, Locked On Avalanche are just waiting while Locked On Lightning keeps it rolling as well. And for this weekend, we say goodbye. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been the Locked On Senators podcast. Your team every day.